Hey, good morning, everybody. It's just about 10 o'clock, so I was going to make a couple of short announcements before we get started with the first presentation. Welcome back to our third and final day of our private well conference. I certainly appreciate everyone who's been involved so far, all the comments, all the information in the chat. This is our last day. Very much a different conference than what we've held in the past, but it's also good in a lot of ways. I wanted to mention a couple things. One, today is a drillers panel. It's at 11 Central Time. So be sure, and if you have questions just in general for our drillers panel, each of the drillers will also give a presentation, so you can ask questions about those specifically as well. Feel free to get them into us. We've got a number of questions that have been given already. I want to mention that we have an evaluation that we'll ask and send out at the end of today to everyone who's attended, either the whole thing or whatever day you may have been here. Please fill that out. Two of the questions are related to the conference next year, and so we really want your feedback on, our plan right now is to put on an in-person conference somewhere out west, because we've done one in central part of the country and one in the east part of the country, and so we're going to go out west next year. But we want to see what everybody thinks, especially those of you that may have attended one or two of the other conferences. Your perspective is important to us. And the other thing was a clarification from Tuesday. Reem Tarek from NEHA said that their pre-conference workshop on private wells was free. What she meant to say was it's free for registered attendees to AEC, which is the NEHA National Conference, and that does have a fee. So you can attend the pre-conference free workshop. And so I want to make that clear. I know there was some confusion on Tuesday. So the first talk today is about our well assessments and how to do effective well assessments. I hope the regions are all involved today and here, and I expect a lot of comments in the chat from them. And so with that, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Steve Wilson, State Water Survey. And this morning I'm going to talk to you about effective private well assessments. I do want to mention that I put this talk together, but really with a lot of help from the regions, although they may not have all known it, based on the assessments they've completed over the last 4 or 5 years. So the assessment tool was developed by a team of experts. So we brought together, I believe it was 12 people who all have a lot of private well experience and wanted to develop a way for people to assess the vulnerability of a well out in the field with kind of a checklist of items to go through. So we could look at the site, the well itself, how they operate, their, what kind of pipes they have, if they've ever tested, all of these issues about their drinking water system, so that we can go through that information and, one, hopefully identify things that they're not aware of or clear about that we can explain to them, as well as identify deficiencies like if it doesn't meet code and some of those things. So really, to complete this tool, it's a process, a one-on-one process with someone assessing the well and the well owner providing information. And you go to their home, you take a look, you do a site assessment. And so it requires someone with more than just basic knowledge to complete. And that's one of the drawbacks. I know when we first rolled this out, the state of New Mexico looked at this and said, we need something a lot simpler that a well owner can fill out. My argument back to them and to everyone who brings that point up is that if many well owners don't know all the things that are necessary or important related to their well and their water system, so how can you expect them to fill out a form and it's going to give them any additional knowledge or help them decrease the vulnerability if they have any? And so we believe this is the right way to go, and we spent a lot of time bringing everyone up to speed. And when you do these assessments, one thing I will tell you is that by working with well owners directly and seeing the variety of types of wells that are out there, from good to bad to really bad, you learn a lot. And the RCAP folks the regional folks over the last 4 or 5 years have become well experts because of this assessment tool. And that's a great thing. And it's also meant to be an educational tool. So while they're asking questions like about backflow devices, at the same time that a lot of well owners may not even understand what those are, and it's a chance to explain that, why they're important. Maybe they're not doing anything where backflow would be an issue, but if they are, then you can help them understand those risks. I do want to point out, I know I've done this before, but this is the group of folks that developed the assessment tool. It's a wide variety of folks from Extension, a driller, state agencies, just researchers, just in public health. And this list is from the original list when we developed this, 5 or 6 years ago. Several of these people are now retired. Some have moved on to other jobs. But when we put this together, this is the group we had. And, I bring this up and I want to bring it up today because what I talked about yesterday regarding the work group, this is the kind of information and the type of group I'd like to put together. The tool is being used extensively around this country. It's just it's worked out much better than I could have ever hoped. And so, all the kudos go to these folks. Some who are probably on the call today, who helped make this what it is and making it so useful. So it is being used all over the country and not just by RCAP. It's like, for instance, we heard on Tuesday from the Massachusetts project, the Central Massachusetts Testing Project. Part of that project is actually doing an assessment of each well. And so it is finding its way into more hands. And I said here, the 4-hour class has had over 1,000 participants. We have a 4-hour workshop. We helped develop for RCAP, and for a couple of years, the regions were actually delivering that workshop in person. And now that's our job, is to deliver that online. And we did it in January, and we had 220 people participate. But all together, between the RCAP regions and the work we've done, we've had over 1,000 participants. It's a 4-hour class that about the first hour and a half or so is about outreach to well owners, and the rest is about how to use assessment tool. And so, again, my hope is that our new work group works out as well as this one did, because it's really been a game changer for the project that we're involved in with the US EPA. So the assessment tool itself has all of these sections. There's who the assessor is, who the participant is, how they use their water. Do they have livestock? All those things. If it's a well or a spring, so it's really an individual water system, because there's a spring section you can use or the well section to describe the well. Pump information, maintenance information, if you have water level or flow information. We have a lot of problems around the country related to low flow wells. I mentioned that in another talk about New Mexico, where they were supposed to get 3 gallons a minute, and it obviously didn't. Also, your household plumbing, your septic information, water quality and treatment, geology and soils, the wells, and then a well and site inspection that you do in person. Developing a site diagram so that you can see where all the potential sources are and issues, and then at the end provide recommendations, suggestions, and issues to note. And all of these things are in a PDF. And originally, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but the idea was to go through all of this. And as you go through, if a well owner doesn't understand a given topic or section, or why you're asking that, it gives you a chance to explain that, to help them see the bigger picture about what goes into managing their well. And it's really a useful tool in that respect, especially if the person who's the assessor spends the time to explain things to the well owner and is willing to provide them follow-up information. So this is an evolving program and the tool itself. As I mentioned, it started out as a printed PDF. So we used actually the Wyoming Sanitary Survey, which is a vulnerability assessment for a community water system, as a template to develop our
this assessment tool. And initially, they were all done printed out, and then you filled it out in the field with a pen or a pencil. And so we've evolved over time. One, there's been a lot of revisions. I can't tell you how many times the wording or the options or different elements of this have changed. When we developed this, at the bottom I talk about developing an iOS and Android tablet version. We had to give the programmers a complete list, an Excel file with titles for every single button or option. There were over 500. And so there's a lot in this and a lot of options. Some of them are multiple choice even. And so those revisions happened because of all the work RCAP did initially to test the tool, and where they had problems, we identified and went back and forth until we figured that out. Once we had what we felt like was the final version of the tool, we developed a fillable PDF of that. And so it's much, one of the things we learned early on is that some folks have better handwriting than other folks. And so that was also a limitation when you're giving this back to a well owner. And so the fillable PDF really helped because it's being typed. And then later we developed a tablet version on both iOS and Android so that you can do this electronically and it still spits out a PDF or a CSV file in the end. And so going through that, you can go to our website and download, it's called the WellAssess mobile app in those stores. You can come to our webpage and get to it as well. You can still also get the paper tool, and this is what I've learned, not being obviously a developer, working with the developers on our campus, is that there's really a difference between iOS and Android in the way they operate, and it caused some challenges for like saving the files and how that worked. But this is the iOS version. The multiple choice stuff is at the bottom. On the Android version, it's a pop-up. Those end up not being big things, but there was anyway. So this is what we have. You can pull up a PDF or an assessment you've already completed. You can download it either way as a PDF or a CSV file, and that's on both of those devices. And it's really handy. You know, our thought, what we do with the RCAP program is we make a copy for or give the original to the well owner, and the RCAP staff keep a copy so they have it if they need it for future follow-up or whatever. But the data doesn't go into any database. It's not shared. It's the well owner's information. But as we developed this, we realized there might be, county health department or some other group that wants to use this where they do want to collect the data and have it stored. And so by adding the option of downloading this as a CSV file, you can combine those and have a whole set of data if you are doing that kind of work. We're not for this project. I want to make that clear. And so what we have learned, and again, I'm on the coattails here of the RCAP staff these days because even though I helped in the development of the tool, I've only done a few dozen assessments myself, where most of the regional staff, together they've done over 2,500. And like I said, you learn a lot about wells and well issues by dealing with all these individual problems because every well's different. They've seen wells that are 150 or 200 years old, wells with casing that's made out of material no one's sure what it is, all kinds of information that you learn by doing these and working with well owners and what they know and don't know. So I want to point out here that I relied a lot on Jesse Campbell from MAP and Cindy Brooks from Great Lakes RCAP, as well as several of the RCAP solution staff and the assessments they've completed to gather the information here, what I'm going to talk about for these assessments. I also viewed some completed assessments from all the regions to get a better idea of how they're doing them and doing them differently. I evaluated their work in the beginning, and that really helped provide the basis for what I'm going to present today, although I am going to lean on the RCAP staff at the end and ask them to participate. So when you get started with an assessment, the first thing to do is once you've identified a well owner and you've agreed to do an assessment, you want to call them first. and you want to gather as much information from them initially as you can. What do they know? What do they have in their files? Do they have their well log? Do they know who the driller was? All this information, and try to fill out as much of that assessment as you can over the phone, so that one, if they have information but don't have it readily available, they can look it up before you come out there and provide it to you, even if that's in paper form. Two, you can take what they don't have. They don't have any idea where their well log is, but you know their location. If local health or county or the state agency, you can look it up, or you can go in and find it. Then you can bring that, scan it, or download a copy, depending on how advanced the state or county might be, and get that information. There's also sometimes underground storage tank information or septic permit information, depending on where you live and what state. And you can look all that information up in advance and have it ready. It's really useful to you to have, because you want to use it in the completed assessment, but at the same time it also shows the well owner that you've done your due diligence. And honestly, it impressed them when you come out there with all this information already in hand that they didn't have, that you can give them a copy of. And by filling in that basic information, it'll shorten your time in the field, and you can get to the issues that you really need to address. So, yeah, and I guess I already mentioned, but it also gives the well owner a chance to look for information, even if, past sample analysis. They've got it in their file somewhere, it was from 12 years ago. Hopefully they can find that if they have it, or when they had their pump replaced, or they had somebody come out and measure the water level or lower their pump. There's all kinds of situations that could have occurred, and if they if they've kept some of that information, you want to get your hands on it. So the basic procedure that I'm outlining here, is you have an initial phone call to get all the information you can, find out what records they have, and that gives you an idea of what you're going to have to go look for. As everyone who's worked on this or even worked with well owners will tell you, many times you can't find a well log. So you look up neighbors' logs, so you get an idea of the geology. Are all the wells the same? Is it clear there's one shallow aquifer in the area? You can learn a lot from looking at records, even if they're not for the home that you're going to visit. Use that information then to find that stuff. Look at a satellite image to see if there's anything nearby. Is there a large feedlot across the street or across the road? Or a cattle operation or something else that might be an influence, and or you can at least ask, hey, there's 4 large buildings, long buildings across the street. Are those hog confinement? Are they chickens? What is it? If it's in that kind of situation. So then set up a time to meet with the well owner, be prepared, and then make sure you have enough time to get through the assessment and discuss all the different pieces, because when you're doing the assessment, they're going to have questions, especially if you bring up topics that they're not familiar with. I'd say one of the more common ones is backflow devices. So a lot of folks don't understand what they are and why they're needed, and maybe they don't need them per se, if they're not mixing things or using a hose, but you can explain all that, and you need to make sure you have the time to do that. So once you've done that, go back to the office, look at all the information, finalize the assessment as much as you can, and as well as the information the well owners provided you, if it's in paper form, scan that, and get prepared so you can develop a better picture of what's going on at that particular site. And then if you have more questions, call them back and try to get those answered. So when you complete the assessment, you'll list recommendations, and then finalize that with the well owner. It can probably be done by email if you scanned everything, and if they're content with that, they may want you to come out and look at something again or whatever, and be prepared. You might need to do that, and you should plan for it. And then you should also keep a copy so that you're prepared. 6 months, a year, 4 years down the road, they may call you and say, hey, you did this well assessment, you identified this thing, now I have this problem, I need your help. And you're going to be much more prepared to go back and work with them if you can see pictures of what it looked like at the time, all those things, and see what's changed, what might have caused their issue. As far as best practices, what we put in the initial assessment was a place to sketch a diagram of all the potential sources and their distances and show how that looks on a hand-drawn map. I think the RCAP regions, when they start doing these, quickly realize today with Google Maps, you can do a much better job if you zoom in on a particular home. And then as you talk to the well owner, you'll notice on this, we talk about a horse pasture, and you can see the garden, an old shed location, an old barn. Those things aren't actually there anymore, and they don't show up on the image, but the well owner knew about those things and explained those to us. And so it gives you a much better picture of, did they store pesticides or chemicals in some of these? Were any of them used? Had livestock, so there could be, an old barn that's full of manure in the time, and that's had plenty of time to get down into the shallow groundwater, all those sorts of issues. And so this is a much better representation of this particular site than what I could have drawn by hand, and that's the bottom line. And it's a much better image to give back to the well owner because it's clear to them. They can see exactly where everything is in relation to each other. Take lots of pictures. I can't stress this enough. You should have a picture of everything. This shows an old well. That's the middle picture. It's an old hand dug well that's right by the house. It's only 25 feet deep, I think. Their well is actually under the windmill, which in the picture on the far right, you can see the windmill and how clear it is. That's because I took that picture after the landowner and I spent probably a good half hour clearing weeds, and it's 5 foot tall weeds to get to that. And you can see on the picture on the left that they've just got a piece of plywood over that, and it was buried underneath, all those weeds and everything. So, and the septic system is in the left picture. That's the access right there next to the house. And clearly the well and the septic aren't set back as far as they should be, but you should take pictures of anything that might be an issue to help you remember the site. And honestly, I guess what I meant here was probably the most important thing is to take enough pictures to be able to tell the story in pictures if you need to. And all of those pictures should be included in the final assessment. The example I used a minute ago, if someone comes back 4 or 5 years later and it's not you, or the well owner has somebody else come to the site and they can hand them the assessment you've completed with all the pictures, it's a much better tool for someone else to help them solve their issue. So things to add to the assessment besides the actual assessment itself: add the well log if you find it, or well permit, any septic information you find if it had to have a permit, all the pictures you've taken, information on topics they don't understand, like you can put in a 2-pager on backflow devices, or something about sampling from a local health department. I guess I'm ahead of myself. Sampling information for the local area, other contacts, flyers, useful information that might help them learn more about their well and how to take care of it. I also recommend putting a cover letter with your information. It looks professional. It gives them something to go by. You can summarize things there and thank them for the work that you've been able to do there and all that stuff. And one of our partners, the Water Systems Council, developed a really nice well owner guide, and I know some of the regions hand those out and give those to well owners when they're doing these assessments. As far as recommendations, there's 2 things. One should be this is what you're telling the well owner about what you found at their home. So this is your teachable moment. There should be a standard set of recommendations you use every time, because there's information they need, like they should sample every year for coliform nitrate. Beyond that, then it's really pointing out any deficiencies or issues that you may find, as well as a solution to those issues if it's needed. So if they have an old abandoned well, the house had a well that I just showed you, they should seal that, fill it in. And if their well's not up to code and it's a real issue, then you should recommend they bring it up to code. It may not be. Their well may be, for instance, let's say you're in a state where the code says it should be 18 inches above grade. If they only have their well casing only comes up 12 inches, but it's on the highest spot in the farmstead, there's no risk of that really overtopping and flooding. They probably don't need to raise their well another 6 inches. So it's really a matter of that experience and learning what they might need to do. Like considering backflow if warranted, remind them of their maintenance needs if they have treatment devices. One of the biggest problems with treatment devices ends up being that people don't take care of it. And some of those things, like filters, can end up clogging and becoming a source of bacteria in your line. And so it's important for people to understand that they need to maintain their treatment if they're going to have it. Consider talking to a topical expert for special needs when you run across those. And also then storage and site concerns. If there is an underground storage tank nearby, if they have chemical storage, every site is different, as I mentioned, and your recommendations should reflect that. As far as standard recommendations, here's the things that I believe you should give as universal advice. Sample for coliform and nitrate annually. The whole point of doing that is they indicate a pathway into your well. Then sample for general chemistry every 3 to 5 years, so that you have a background chemistry for your groundwater, and as well as anything identified during the assessment. And that includes, I know I talked about beryllium in the workshop talk I gave in Rhode Island. If you find that when you're doing your search online, then you'd want to recommend that if they're in that area. As far as your septic goes, there are questions about septic systems in there. You should recommend that they pump it as recommended, whether that's 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, depending on number of people and the size of the tank. Inspect your well cap and casing annually. Offer future assistance. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, or if you want me to provide this assessment to somebody else, let me know. And then take our class. The private well class was developed cooperatively with RCAP so that well owners could learn all the basics about their well and how water flows and treatment and best practices. It's a tool that brings up their level of knowledge, and so it's certainly something we would recommend. With that, I'm going to stop, and if hopefully the RCAP staff who are on the webinar today, or on the webinar at the conference today, will weigh in or have been weighing in the chat, and at this point I'll go there as well, and we can take a look. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And there are a couple of comments. Jeremy Parasol from RCAC mentioned that he's ran across well owners who don't believe in backflow devices. I certainly get that. There's certainly freezing issues with certain types, so I mentioned that in the chat. And I'm going to pop up here what Jesse just mentioned. They should be taken out of service and inspected, and I've never heard of anyone doing that either. The other thing that seems, this jogged my memory on something. Madison County, New York did some work through a CDC grant looking at wells, and one of the things they focused on were the well caps. And what they found is where they had problems were where the well caps weren't sealed properly. And I've never heard of anyone replacing their gasket, which is also, especially if you're in an area like in a northern state where you have freezing and thawing, you really have to replace that gasket on your sanitary well cap because they get brittle. And I've opened a number of wells, many wells, where that gasket's in pieces or there's only part of it there. And yet we never see that as a recommendation, and I even left it out of this talk. But it's another thing, if they have that type of cap that has a gasket to seal the sanitary well cap, it really should be part of your recommendations. So, yeah, I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts. Please put them in the chat. I don't see any other information right now. So it's okay. I'm going to. They do, and I have many well owners ask, why didn't the guy that worked on it last time recommend that I fix it? Well, I'm not sure. And I think, a lot of well drillers would recommend that you, if they're going to open the well and they see the gasket's bad, they're going to replace it because that's just a best practice. And especially, yeah, the seal. So anyway, if you're not familiar with our assessment tool, and I say ours, but it's a communal thing, as I mentioned. Take a look. We do host a class. We're going to have another one this fall. It's 4 hours long, so it's not for the week, but part of that is about outreach to well owners, which is also really useful. And Joe Fields just mentioned in the chat that improper use of chlorine will kill those seals as well, and that's for sure. And so the class, though, is really worthwhile as far as going through some examples, learning about what we did on the outreach side to develop kind of a methodology for how to do outreach to well owners if you want to start a program. And so with that, here's a question here. Do well caps have gaskets, or are there models without? I believe most of them I work with all have seals or have gaskets. I'm sure if we talked, that's a good question. I'll add that to the list for the drillers panel today, because we have drillers from 3 different parts of the country, and I'm sure some of that's regional for sure, and they're much more qualified to answer that than I am. And I believe most will have, to be sealed, it almost has to have a gasket. So let's see. It says, I find that is the case with a small transient non-community system as well, old caps without a sealed or gasket, often the source of bacteria problems. And that's what Madison County found. It was a great project they put on at the end. I mean, it really statistically proved in their area, which is upstate New York, that there were certainly issues when people had caps that weren't properly sealed and doing what they're supposed to. They saw a lot more bacteria problems. So thank you.